At Summer NAMM 2019, I wanted to make a different type of video that's typically done. I wanted to go in depth with philosophy and why certain pieces of gear were created. I wanted to go into the application and how this will change the way that we record or mix. Okay, cool. I'm hanging out with Darren at Flock Audio. This thing is really cool. I enjoy using a Patchbay, but it's kind of a nightmare at the same time.
Absolutely.
Tell me what you got going here.
Sure. So what I have here is we have the Flock Audio patch system. And what it is it's 64-point, digitally controlled, but 100% analog Patchbay routing system. So it's a really, really cool system. It's got 32 inputs, 32 outputs, DB25s on the back, standard Tascam wiring format. And we have USB 2.0 control as far as for the host signal. Right. So we use a little bit of an older cable because we really don't have to worry about like a lot of data transmission between the system and your CPU. We have on the front here, we have 2 inputs and 2 outputs. We call it the auditioning strip. They're not dedicated, they're not forced. They actually flip from the back to the front on 31 and 32. So when you bring a new piece of gear into the studio or a new microphone or whatever, or even if you want to track it to an amp sim, that's why we have the nice combo jacks here. So it's really, really cool in that sense.
Yeah.
It has 48-volt phantom power on board, individually engageable. You kind of choose which one you want to lock out, so you're never going to wreck your nice ribbon microphone by accident.
Okay.
We did a lot of measurements through various connections, patch bays, and industry standard patch bays, and we found a lot of the connections were actually underpowering the mic. So from the preamp through a patch bay, through your actual patch cables, some microphones were getting like around 38 to 40 volts. And for a specific microphone that needs that voltage to power it, you're not necessarily going to notice immediately that it's quite, but you're not getting that full quality of that microphone and what it was designed for. So we said we're just going to build it directly into the system.
So you'd go from the mic into patch, then to the preamp?
Yeah, and you can either do it either which way. It's completely entirely up to you as the user. So it absolutely is possible to go from the microphone into patch, out of patch into your preamp, out of your preamp back into patch, and so on and so forth. But if you had something like a preamp dedicated and you wanted it to go mic into preamp into patch, you can absolutely do that. It's not restrictive by any means.
Now what about impedance? Like if a mic likes a certain impedance?
And that's something you have to be very kind of conscientious of, right? Depending on the style of mic and whatnot, you have to kind of know that if you have a microphone that needs like specific ribbon, for instance, like one of the AEAs, you would want to put that preamp in the front because you want to get the full amount of that mic and you want to have that adjustable impedance. Ours is no non-adjustable impedance in this system.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's check out the app because that's really where all the magic happens.
The app is super cool and we're forever updating with awesome features, so let's dive into it.
Cool.
So what we have here is the Patch app. This is actually Patch app version 2.0. We're releasing this in a couple weeks, and the coolest part about this version of the Patch app, it just comes loaded with a bunch of customer requested features, which is awesome. We're always listening to our customers, and when they recommend something or suggest something, we take it into a log and we'll absolutely put it in the app, over the course of our new releases. So at first visual, look at the app, it looks very much like a DAW, and that's the way we wanted to design it. We wanted to make it very simple so when someone literally sets up their patch system, you understand it almost immediately. All of the hardware that's connected to the actual patch system is all listed here in what we call the hardware index. The hardware index has everything that's managed, labeled, and everything like that, all through what we call here the hardware setup menu, conveniently located at the bottom of the hardware index. You're not jumping a whole bunch of menus. Everything's listed here. This is where you label, you lock out stuff, whether it be your 48-volt phantom power, and you link channels. So here we're going to do a really simple vocal routing, okay? We're going to go and choose our microphone. It's all drag and drop. As soon as I drag and drop that, it's immediately routed in the actual hardware. Cool. Then I'm going to grab a preamp. I'm going to grab a compressor, an EQ, and then links. So right then and there, we just did a vocal chain routing of 5 different, parts to this in 5 seconds if I wasn't yapping through it. Right. Another really cool part about this is we've added bypass and rearranging functions. So if we like this 1176 and it's at the back of the room and we didn't want to have to lean over and toggle the bypass on it, you can bypass right from the Patch app. You can either do it from holding command and clicking, which I only have the one hand, so I'll have to take my word for it, or else you can right click on it and bypass it as well. And you can do that in real time, which is really, really cool. The other part is the rearranging. So if you're listening to it and you're like, well, I'd technically like to hear that pull tech before the compressor, just drag and drop it over top, and it'll flip it in real time as well. And you can do this as you're actually processing audio, which is nice.
Wow.
Yeah, we have malting capabilities, so you can actually split signals off without any impedance issues, no special cables you needed, nothing like that. It's easy to do. Just simply choose a spot. So if we have this signal chain here and we want to malt off of this compressor so we can run through a different EQ on the way in, but still keep our original signal chain, just click the M, choose your EQ here, and then just go back into converter here. And now you have two stems of audio going into your, into your interface from one single source. So it's really, really crazy. You can go complex, like I was explaining earlier, or really simple with it.
Yeah.
All the routings are stored here in our stored routings menu, and you can take these, you can even move them into client session folders. Really easy to access. You're not jumping all over the place. We tried to take everything that people need about a Patchbay or an analog router and just make it simple and make it fun again. Treat your hardware like plugins.
As you were talking, I noticed the save, and I'm like, oh my gosh, just that one feature of like, I got all this crap set up for drums, and we need to do something totally random that's very different.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to rip up mics and stuff, and then it's gonna take at least 10 minutes to get everything back.
And you're losing your momentum, right? Because you're excited about something and you're like, hey, I really want to do this. That's why this feature, even with the malting, is great, because you can take a single snare drum mic and you can make such complex sort of, processing chains in it. You can make thick, dry, like whatever you want to do with all kinds of gear that you have set up in your studio.
How many times can you molt?
As many times as you have available I/O. A little bit crazy, but
so
it's
more
awesome.
than one or two, basically.
Absolutely, absolutely. We just added in version 2.0 for our guys who are mainly mixing or doing mastering. We have stereo pairing now. So you can actually treat two rack spaces as a pair. So when you drag and drop it, if I clear this up here, and this is being rolled out, as I mentioned. So if you do this, you're gonna notice now you have two rack spaces. You can bypass them the same time, remove them, everything. So even more flexibility and efficiency in the system.
You mentioned the momentum, and that's such an important thing, because there's so many things that could just grind a session to a halt, and you can't get back that time and that
enthusiasm in the session, right? Especially the artists, even like how many times when you retrack an artist and they start to lose that enthusiasm, like that just excitement, right?
I know, you have to go fast, and they're not waiting on us anymore.
No.
The music can just happen and it can flow.
Well, and you get to be so creative on your side too, right? I always felt like with a conventional Patchbay, an audio engineer was very restricted in a sense of like how creative they could be. And most of the times they wouldn't be creative because they're like, I don't want to touch the Patchbay. I don't want to touch it. And I hear that story all the time from, like new customers who now have Patch, and they're like, I'm doing signal combinations that I never would have done before because I didn't want to touch it. Right? Didn't want to break the cable, I didn't want it half pulled out or whatever, scratchiness. So that's really, really cool that we've added to this system, that fun back to doing analog routing and outboard gear. It's a true hybrid system.
So you said that it's all analog but digitally controlled?
Correct.
So how does that work to where it's analog?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way it is that basically the digital component of Patch literally is just sending the command set and telling our chips that we use on which way to route out of our matrix. Okay. Yeah, so it remains, the signal never gets changed or digitized, so there's no D to A to D, no latency either, which is fantastic. And sonically transparent too, because we're not altering the signal at all. So another really cool thing, just as you were mentioning, and like when you're working in various studios, the more Patch systems that are in studios and stuff like that, we've made it almost kind of like cross-transferable. So we'll talk a hypothetical situation. If you were going to work in a studio, say in California, we're here in Nashville, but you're going down to California to work and they have a Patch system, you can download an instance of the Patch app, an offline version. You can get that studio to export out the hardware list, and you can be on the plane literally knowing the gear you're working with, setting up routings, and then just pulling them into the session as soon as you get there. So again, you're getting to work with the artist, not with cables. There's a lot of cool stuff that we have happening. Like Patch, where it's sitting right now, is an amazing, amazing piece of gear, but the
Yeah.
stuff we have coming in the future and we're rolling out for Patch and stuff is just going to blow the minds of our customers and our future customers. They're going to love it. And we feel really great that we are bringing sort of that analog feel back to, you know, a lot of audio production, because unfortunately, you know, it's moved more and more towards digital, and as fantastic as it is, there's still a lot of great analog gear out there and still a lot of great audio engineers who love using that gear. Well, now you don't have to worry about messing around with the Patchbay. You can control it digitally and still utilize that analog gear. Very high investment analog gear, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for showing me this. This is really cool, man.
Yeah, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure.